Ladies and gentlemen, today and for the next month, we continue our massive attempt at reading every book in all of Oblivion, and we continue that at Sickly Bernice's Tap House here in Crucible. Yeah, I feel like it's just a better atmosphere. It's a more open, oddly enough, welcoming atmosphere than anywhere that the game has to offer in the Land of Mania. So yeah, we're going to have a seat in our comfy, cozy chair, and we're going to try and read as many of these goddamn books as we possibly can. And I think we're actually just going to start with a series. Might as well just get the series going, right? That series is going to be The Wolf Queen. We got volumes 1 through 8. 25 pages and 17 pages. Yeah, I feel like that might be enough. If we have like a short... I don't think any of these are like short books, though. I would say like if we had like a quick book, we could always do that at the start right now. I'm not really worried about... Alright, you know what, fuck it, we'll read The Pig Children. The Pig Children, by Tistin Bane. No one, not the oldest dark elf of Mount Dagoth or the ancient sage of solitude himself, can recall a time when the orc did not ravage our fair Tamriel. Whatever foul and pestilent daedra of Oblivion conjured them up could scarcely have created a more constant threat to the well-being of the civilized races of Tamriel than the obnoxious orc. God, all the racism thrown together in the Pig Children, also known as the orcs. Sheesh. Okay. Orcs are thankfully easy to recognize from other humanoids by their size. Commonly 40 pertins in height and 15... What the fuck is a pertin? What kind of unit of measurement is that? Okay. In height and 15,000 anglades in weight. I don't know what the hell that means. Their brutal pig-like features and their stench. They're consistently belligerent, morally grotesque, intellectually moronic, and unclean. By all rights, the civilized races of Tamriel should have been able to purge the land of their blight eras ago. But their ferocity, animal cunning, and curious tribal loyalty have made them inevitable as leeches in a stagnant pool. Jeez, this might be the most straight up racist book we have ever read. Tales of orcish barbarity precede a written record. When Justaga wrote of the Order of Diagnas joining the armies of Daggerfall and Sentinel to hold at bay the wicked orcs and their foul Orsinium fastness, and burn aught in cleansing flame. In the First Era 950, she assumed that any reader would be aware of the savagery of the orcs. When the siege was completed 30 years later, after the death of many heroes, including Gaiden Sinji. Right? Gaiden Sinji, yeah. That's a name we know from the arena. And, yeah, that was a long-ass time ago. Holy shit. And the destruction of Orsinium scattered the orcish survivors throughout the Hrothgarian mountains. She further wrote, The free peoples rejoiced for that their ancient fell enemy was dispersed into diverse parts. Obviously, the orcs had been terrorizing the reign of the Iliac Bay, at least since the early years of the First Era. Nice. No better way to start off the day with some good old-fashioned racism. Alright, and then The Wolf Queen. Here we go. This series on The Wolf Queen will take us through the next 4 videos that we have. We're going to be reading 2 books a day. Yeah, here we go. The Wolf Queen, Book 1, Volume 1, by Wayon Jarth. I feel like this dude has wrote so many fucking books. It's kind of crazy. From the pen of the 1st century 3rd Era sage Montekai. 3rd Era, 63. In the autumn tide of the year, Prince Pelagius, son of Prince Uriel, who is son of the Empress Kintera, who is niece of the great Emperor Tiber Septim, came to the high rock city-state of Camlorn to pay court to the daughter of King Volstade. Her name was Quintilla. the most beauteous princess in Tamriel, skilled at all maidenly skills, and an accomplished sorceress. 11 years a widower with a young son named Antiochus Pelagius. Oh my god, what the fuck was that noise that my mouth just made? Oh my god. 11 years a widower with a young son named Antiochus Pelagius arrived at court to find that the city-state was being terrorized by a great demon werewolf. Instead of wooing, Pelagius and Quintilla together went out to save the kingdom. With his sword and her sorcery, the beast was slain, and by the powers of mysticism, Quintilla chained the beast's soul to a gem. Pelagius had the gem made into a ring and married her, but it was said that the soul of the wolf stayed with the couple until the birth of their first child. Third Era, 80. With the ambassador from Solitude has arrived, Your Majesty, whispered the steward, Balvis. I feel like we've heard that name before. Right in the middle of dinner, muttered the Emperor weakly. Tell him to wait. No, father, it's important that you see him, said Pelagius, rising. You can't make him wait and then give him bad news. It's undiplomatic. Don't go then. You're much better at diplomacy than I am. We should have all the family here, Emperor Uriel II added, suddenly aware how few people were present at his dinner table. Where's your mother? Sleeping with the archpriest of Kinnereth, Pelagius would have said, but he was, as his father said, diplomatic. Instead he said, at prayer. And your brother and sister? Amiel is in Firsthold, meeting with the Archmagister at the Mages Guild, and Galena, though we won't be telling this to the ambassador, of course, is preparing for her wedding to the Duke of Narcissus. Since the ambassador expects her to be marrying his patron, the King of Solitude, instead, we'll tell him that she's at the spa, having a cluster of pestilent boils removed. Tell him that, and he won't press too hard for the marriage, politically expedient though it may be. Pelagius smiled. You know how queasy Nords are about warty women. But dash it, I feel like I should have some family around, so I don't look like some old fool despised by his nearest and dearest, growled the Emperor, correctly suspecting this to be the case. What about your wife? Where's she and the grandchildren? Quintilla's in the nursery with Sepphoris and Magnus, and Tychus is probably whoring around the city. I don't know where Patema is. Probably at her studies. I thought you didn't like children around. I do during meetings with ambassadors in damp staterooms, sighed the Emperor. They lend an air of, innocence and civility. Show the blasted ambassador in, he said to Balvis. Patema was bored. It was the rainy season in the Imperial Province, wintertide, and the streets in the gardens of the city were all flooded. In the Imperial City, really? Okay. She could not remember a time when it was not raining. Had it been only days, or had it been weeks or months since the sun shone? There was no judging of time any more in the constant flickering torchlight of the palace, and as Patema walked through marble and stone hallways, listening to the pelting of the rain, she could think nothing but that she was bored. Estef, her tutor, would be looking for her now. Ordinarily, she did not mind studying. Rote memorization came easily to her. She quizzed herself as she walked down the empty ballroom. When did Orsinium fall? First Era... talk about Orsinium. When did Orsinium fall? First Era, 980. Who wrote Tamrillian Tractates? Cosi. When was Tiber Septim born? Second Era, 288. Who was the current king of Daggerfall? Mortian, son of Gothlin. Who is the current Sylvanar? Varbarneth, son of Varbaril. Who is the warlord of Lilmorth? Trick question. It's a lady, Iowa. What will I get if I'm a good girl and don't get into any trouble, and my tutor says I'm an excellent student? Mother and father will renege on their promise to buy me a Daedric katana of my own, saying they never remembered that promise, and it's far too expensive and dangerous for a girl my age. There were voices coming from the Emperor's stateroom, her father, her grandfather, and a man with a strange accent to Nord. Patema moved a stone she had loosened behind a tapestry and listened in. Let us be frank, Your Imperial Majesty, came the Nord's voice. My sire, the King of Solitude, doesn't care if Princess Galana looked like an orc. He wants an alliance with the Imperial family, and you agreed to give him Galana, or give back the millions of gold he gave to you. Millions, wow. The millions of gold he gave to you to quell the Khajiit rebellion in Torval. This was the agreement you swore to honor. I remember no such agreement, came her father's voice. Can you, my liege? There was a mumbling voice that Potema took to be her grandfather, the ancient emperor. Perhaps we should take a walk to the Hall of Records. My mind may be going, the Nord's voice sounded sarcastic. I distinctly remember your seal being placed on the agreement before I was locked away, of course. I may verily be mistaken. We will send a page to the hall to get the document you refer to, replied her father's voice, with the cruel, soothing quality he used whenever he was about to break a promise. Potema knew it well. She replaced the loose stone and hurried out of the ballroom. She knew well how slowly the pages walked, used to running errands for a doddering emperor. She could make it to the Hall of Records in no time at all. The massive ebony door was locked, of course, but she knew what to do. A year ago, she caught her mother's Bosmer maid pilfering some jewelry. In exchange for silence, forced the young woman to teach her how to pick locks. Potema pulled 2 pins off her red diamond brooch and slid the first into the first lock. The red diamond, huh? Holding her hand steady and memorizing the pattern of tumblers and grooves within the mechanism. Each lock had a geography of its own. It's got to be a skill book somehow, everybody. The lock to the kitchen larder, 6 free tumblers, a frozen 7th, and a counterbolt. She had broken into that just for fun, but if she had been a poisoner, the whole imperial household would be dead by now, she thought, smiling. The lock to her brother Antiochus' secret stash of Khajiit pornography. Just 2 free tumblers and a pathetic poisoned quill trap, easily dismantled with pressure on the counterweight. That had been a profitable score. What? A profitable score, okay. It was strange that Antiochus, who seemed to have no shame, proved so easy to blackmail. She was, after all, only 12, and the differences between the perversions of the cat people and the perversions of the Cyrodiils seemed pretty academic. Still, Antiochus had to give her the diamond brooch, which she treasured. She had never been caught, not when she broke into the Archmage's study and stole his eldest spell book, not when she broke into the guest room of the King of Ghislaine and stole his crown the morning before Magnus's official welcoming ceremony. It had become too easy to torment her family with these little crimes, but here was a document the Emperor wanted for a very important meeting. She would get it first. But this was the hardest lock she ever opened. Over and over she massaged the tumblers, gently pushing aside the forked clamp that snatched at her pins, drumming the counterweights. It nearly took her half a minute to break through the door to the Hall of Records. Half a minute, which in this game is half of a second, but half a minute is also half an hour in this game? I don't really know. Alright. Where the Elder Scrolls were housed. Oh, really? The documents were well organized by year, province, and kingdom, and it took Potema only a short while to find the promise of marriage between Uriel Septim II, by the grace of the gods, Emperor of the Holy Cyrodiilic Empire of Tamriel, and his daughter, the Princess Galana, and his Majesty King Amantiarcho of Solitude. She grabbed her prize and was out of the hall, with the door well locked before the page was even in sight. Back in the ballroom, she loosened the stone and listened eagerly to the conversation within. For a few minutes, the 3 men, the Nord, the Emperor, and her father, just spoke of the weather and some boring diplomatic details. Then there was the sound of footsteps in a young voice, the page. Your Imperial Majesty, I have searched the Hall of Records and cannot find the documents you asked for. There, you see, came Potema's father's voice. I told you it didn't exist. But I saw it, the Nord's voice was furious. I was there when my liege and the Emperor signed it. I was there. I hope you aren't doubting the word of my father, the sovereign emperor of all Tamriel, not when there's now proof that you must have been mistaken. Pelagius's voice was low, dangerous. Of course not, said the Nord, conceding quickly. But what will I tell my king? He is to have no connection with the imperial family and no gold returned to him as he and I believe the agreement to be. We don't want any bad feelings between the Kingdom of Solitude and us, came the Emperor's voice, rather feeble, but clear enough. What if we offered King Mantiarco our granddaughter instead? Patema felt the chill of the room descend on her. The Princess Patema, is she not too young? Asked the Nord. She is 13 years old. Definitely too young, said her father. That's old enough to wed. Yeah, okay. She would an ideal mate for your king, said the Emperor. She is, admittedly, from what I see of her, very shy and innocent. But I'm innocent, I don't know about that. Well, innocent in certain aspects, yeah. But I'm certain she would quickly grasp the ways of court. She is, after all, a septim. I think she would be an excellent Queen of Solitude. Not too exciting, but noble. The granddaughter of the Emperor is not as close as his daughter, said the Nord, rather miserably. But I don't see how we can refuse the offer. I will send word to my king. You have our leave, said the Emperor, and Patema heard the sound of the Nord leaving the stateroom. Tears streamed down Patema's eyes. She knew who the King of Solitude was from her studies. Mantiarco, 62 years old and quite fat. And she knew how far Solitude was, and how cold in the northernmost clime. Well, Solitude is actually like the nicest part of the whole fucking Skyrim, as far as the weather goes, pretty much. Maybe. Oh, Falkreath is always raining. Yeah. I guess Whiterun is probably the best weather-wise. And then Solitude. Kind of take your pick there. Or maybe Markarth. Markarth also has good weather, I think. Anyway. Her father and grandfather were abandoning her to the barbaric Nords. The voices in the room continued talking. Well acted, my boy. Now make sure you burn that document, said her father. My prince, asked the page's querulous voice. The agreement between the Emperor and the King of Solitude, you fool. We don't want its existence known. My prince, I told the truth. I couldn't find the document in the Hall of Records. It seems to be missing. By Lorkhan, roared her father. Why is everything in this palace always misplaced? Go back to the hall and keep searching until you find it. Patema looked at the document. Millions of gold pieces promised to the Kingdom of Solitude in the event of Princess Galana not marrying the king. She could bring it into her father, and perhaps as a reward he would not marry her to Mantiarco. Or perhaps not. She could blackmail her father and the Emperor with it, and make a tidy sum of money. Or she could produce it when she became Queen of Solitude to fill her coffers, and buy anything she wanted. More than a Daedric katana, that was for certain. So many possibilities, Patema thought, and she found herself not bored anymore. Okay. The Wolf Queen, Book 2. Here we go. From the pen of the 1st century 3rd Era sage Montagai. 3rd Era, 82. A year after the wedding of his 14-year-old granddaughter, the Princess Patema, to King Mantiarco of the Nordic Kingdom of Solitude, the Emperor Uriel Septim II passed on. His son, Pelagius Septim II, was made emperor, and he faced a greatly depleted treasury, thanks to his father's poor management. As the new Queen of Solitude, Patema faced opposition from the old Nordic houses, who viewed her as an outsider. Mantiarco had been widowed, and his former queen was loved. She had left him a son, Prince Bethorg, and was 2 years older than his stepmom, and loved her not. But the king loved his queen, and suffered with her through miscarriage after miscarriage, until her 29th year, when she bore him a son. 3rd Era, 97. You must do something to help the pain, Patema cried, baring her teeth. The healer Kelmeth immediately thought of a she-wolf in labor, but he put the image from his mind. Her enemies called her the Wolf Queen for certs, but not because of any physical resemblance. Your Majesty, there is no injury for me to heal. The pain you feel is natural and helpful for the birth. He was going to add more words of consolation, but he had to break off to duck the mirror she flung at him. I'm not a pig-nosed peasant girl, she snarled. I am the Queen of Solitude, daughter of the Emperor. Summon the Daedra. I'll trade the soul of every last subject of mine for a little comfort. My lady, said the healer nervously, drawing the curtains and blotting out the cold morning sun. It is not wise to make such offers even in jest. The eyes of Oblivion are forever watching for such a rash interjection. What would you know of Oblivion, healer? She growled. God, she's grown a lot between books, huh? She growled, but her voice was calmer, quieter. The pain had relaxed. Would you fetch me that mirror I hurled at you? "Are you going to throw it again, your majesty?" said the healer with a taut smile, obeying her. "Very likely," she said, looking at her reflection. "And next time I won't miss. But I do look a fright. Is Lord Vaken still waiting for me in the hall?" "Yes, your majesty." "Well, tell him I just need to fix my hair and I'll be with him. And leave us. I'll howl for you when the pain returns." "I'll howl for you." Okay, Wolf Queen. "Yes, your majesty." A few minutes later, Lord Voken was shown into the chamber. He was an enormous, bald man whose friends and enemies called Mount Voken, and when he spoke it was with the low grumble of thunder. The queen was one of the very few people Voken knew who was not the least bit intimidated by him, and he offered her a smile. "My queen, how are you feeling?" he asked. "Damned, but you're looking like spring tide has come to Mount Voken. I take it from your merry disposition that you've been made war chief?" "Only temporarily, while your husband, the king, investigates whether there is evidence behind the rumors of treason on the part of my predecessor, Lord Thone." "If you've planted it as I've instructed, he'll find it," Patema smiled, propping herself up in the bed. "Tell me, is the Prince Bathorg still in the city?" "What a question, your highness," laughed the mountain. "It's the tournament of stamina today. You know the prince would never miss that. The fellow invents new strategies of self-defense every year to show off during the games. Don't you recall last year, when he entered the ring unarmored and after 20 minutes of fending off 6 bladesmen, left the games without a scratch? He dedicated that bout to his late mother, Queen Amadetha." "Yes, I recall. He's no friend to me or you, your highness, but you must give the man his due respect. He moves like lightning. You wouldn't think it of him, but he always seems to use his awkwardness to his advantage, to throw his opponents off. Some say he learned the style from the orcs to the south. They say he learned from them how to anticipate a foe's attack by some sort of supernatural power." "There's nothing supernatural about it," said the queen quietly. "He gets it from his father." "Miantiarco never moved like that," Voken chuckled. "I never said he did," said Patema, his eyes closed and her teeth gritted together. "The pain's returning. You must fetch the healer, but first, I must ask you one other thing. Has the new summer palace construction began?" "I think so, your highness." "Do not think," she cried, gripping the sheets, biting her lips as a stream of blood dripped down her chin. "Do! Make certain that the construction begins at once, today! Your future, my future, and the future of this child depend on it. Go." 4 hours later, King Mantiarco entered the room to see his son. His queen smiled weakly, and he gave her a kiss on the forehead. When she handed him the child, a tear ran down his face. Another one quickly followed, and then another. "My lord," she said fondly, "I know you're sentimental, but really—" "It's not only the child, though. He is beautiful, with all the fair features of his mother." Mantiarco turned to his wife. Sadly, his aged features twisted in agony. "My dear wife, there is trouble at the palace. In truth, this birth is the only thing that keeps this day from being the darkest in my reign." "What is it? Something at the tournament?" Tama pulled herself up in bed. "Something with Balthorg." "No, it isn't a tournament, but it does relate to Balthorg. I shouldn't worry you at a time like this. You need your rest. My husband, tell me!" "I wanted to surprise you with a gift after the birth of our child, so I had the old summer palace completely renovated. It's a beautiful place, or at least it was. I thought you might like it, truth to tell. It was Lord Voken's idea. It used to be Amadetha's favorite place." Bitterness crept into the king's voice. "Now I've learned why." "What have you learned?" asked Patema quietly. "Amadetha deceived me there, with my trusted war chief, Lord Thone. There were letters between them, the most perverse things you've ever read. And that's not the worst of it, no? The dates on the letters correspond with the time of Bathorg's birth, the boy I raised and loved as a son." Mantarco's voice choked up with emotion. "He was Thone's child, not mine." "My darling," said Patema, almost feeling sorry for the old man. She wrapped her arms around his neck as he heaved his sobs down on her and their child. "Henceforth," he said quietly, "Bathorg is no longer my heir. He will be banished from the kingdom. This child you have borne me today will grow to rule Solitude." "And perhaps more," said Patema. "He is the Emperor's grandson as well." We will name him Mantiarco II. My darling, I would love that, said Potema, kissing the king's tear-streaked face. But may I suggest Uriel, after my grandfather the emperor, who brought us together in marriage. King Mantiarco smiled at his wife and nodded his head. There was a knock at the door. My liege, said Mount Svoken, His Highness Prince Bethorg has finished the tournament and awaits you to present his award. He has He has successfully withstood attacks by 9 archers and the giant scorpion we brought in from Hammerfell. The crowd is roaring his name. They are calling him the man who cannot be hit. Sounds familiar to a different story we read before. I will see him, said King Mantiarco sadly, and left the chamber. Oh, he can be hit all right, said Potema wearily, but it does take some doing. Well, that is going to do it for this story for now. When next we return, we shall continue the story of the Wolf Queen. And then when we return after that, we will also continue the story of the Wolf Queen. And even when we return from that, we will continue the story of the Wolf Queen. And even when we return from that, we'll continue some other books. But yeah, that's going to do it for today. We're another 3 books closer, everybody. Whew. Yeah, alright, goodbye. Goodbye, everybody, yeah.
I'm sorry to trouble you again.
No!
Would you please get...
No! Nope, sorry, Sickly. I've already done it twice. If you die, if she dies, she dies. Alright, goodbye.
Cause I don't wanna see the glow without you. Refuse to even leave my home without you. Or my brain's gonna explode without you. I don't even know how to cope without you. Cause I don't wanna see the glow without you. Refuse to even leave my home without you. Or my brain's gonna explode without you. I don't even know how to cope without you.